Hey everyone, it's Tony with Hidden Light Photography.
Hey, and Frank from Seti Astro.
And today we're going to get started with scripting.
To get into scripting, I would highly recommend anybody to go to the PixInsight forum. I did send you the link directly to this. There is a webinar done by Roberto here, and it's really good. It can get a little long and dry. That's why I think, this kind of forum may be good too. More hop in and see what's going on. They get into a lot of technical details that I don't think really matter a whole lot when you're actually scripting, but it's a good one to watch for sure. You can see there's like Adam Block in the audience and stuff there, so there's some big name people in there. But the really cool thing is he made all this information available too. So there's a whole GitLab repository where he has all these files from the lecture in it. So there's, just like the simple hello world. There's, it's everything they talk about already kind of written for you. So if you're just looking to grab a script and just play around with it too, this is a good spot to get it. So I guess with that, I could talk a little bit about script structure. They all have this .js file. They're really just text files. So if we go into PixInsight, off on the left for me, there's something called a script editor. If you don't see that, I believe you should be able to see if I can find it here. Yeah, it's right here. View script editor. It's kind of prominent, but it should be right on the left. And then if you right click it, you could also check it off there too to make sure it's visible. But this thing usually will just be blank when you first open it. It'll look like this. So when you're getting script text and stuff, I just usually do it within this thing. You can do it in fancier coding software like Visual Studio or any of those. But at the end of the day, I like doing it in PixInsight since you can run it right away in PixInsight and get immediate feedback on if it's going to give you an error or if it's doing what you're wanting it to do. So
Yeah, I was
I did
playing with
send
it a little bit.
again.
I was playing with it a little bit the other day. It does seem a lot easier to do it within PixInsight, so you have that live feedback.
Yeah. So I sent the bare bones template to you, and I'm assuming we're making that available to everybody, right? We'll just put it out there for the world to have for sure. Um,
Correct. Yeah.
yeah, a little bit about structure when you're in here. There's the normal like save and stuff. You're going to have to save it in order to run it. And if you want to run a script from in here, it's this little lightning bolt, and that just compiles and runs it immediately. So it'll also save it. So if you make some change in here, if you just hit the red lightning bolt, it'll save it and run it. PixInsight also has some quirks to it. So if you are Googling how to do something in JavaScript, it may or may not work. Um, they use a really old version of JavaScript in PixInsight, like from when they first made PixInsight. And so not a lot of the features in modern JavaScript language will work. So especially if you're using something like ChatGPT to help you code, which is what I do. I use ChatGPT to help me code. A lot of the time, they're going to give you a snippet of code. You're going to try to run it. It's going to give you some error, and then just copy and paste that error back to ChatGPT to say, "Hey, I got this thing," and they're like, "Oh, well, PixInsight doesn't support that thing I just tried to have you do. Here, let's try it a different way. So just keep in mind it's going to be a lot of trial and error if you're not used to JavaScript, which I wasn't. So it was definitely a learning experience. In PixInsight, if you want your script to show up under scripts, right, as a feature script, when you go script, feature script, and add it, you're definitely going to need this stuff at the top where it's this hashtag feature ID and hashtag feature info. It looks for that right at the top to tell it to put it into that script menu. For the ID itself, you need a name for it. Then there'll be a colon and where it actually is going. So I have all my stuff going to Seti Astro, and then the name of the script. You can put like utilities here, and then it'll go into utilities or wherever you want, right? The feature info, you can have really any text after that. That doesn't matter a whole lot. That's just what shows up when you go to scripts, feature scripts, and to add it, it's that text in there. At the top of scripts, you're also going to find some includes. These are libraries in order to do certain things in the script, right? You're not going to, the JavaScript is really like some programming language to run a bunch of little pieces inside PixInsight. It's not necessarily the code itself doing this stuff. It's really telling PixInsight how to do a lot of different things. So it uses standard libraries that are already within PixInsight to do a lot of the heavy lifting behind the scenes. So you're going to have a lot of these includes. At the top of like some of my more involved scripts, oh, not that one. You're going to see like a bunch of these things. It doesn't hurt you to include a ton of them. If you got them, include them so you don't run into errors. That's usually what I do. I find the one that I have that had the most and just slap at the top. It's probably lazy coding, but I'm not in this yet in software development, right?
Right.
Some other bit about the structure. Like any other bit, you're going to find some variables. In our bare bones example here, we just have this curve value. It's just a variable that we could assign something to. You're going to have some functions. In this case, we're going to just apply a curve. And inside that is also this curve value. So we're passing that curve value into it. And then kind of the biggest headache out of all the scripting is making the dialogue or the graphical user interface where you actually interact with the script. Not everybody likes typing in the console over here to do stuff, right? They don't want just a text interface. They want sliders, they want buttons, they want checkboxes, all that kind of stuff. So that's going to take a big chunk of your script. So in this entire script, to just run some curves, 90% of it here, 80% of it is just the interface. And when you're scripting, you're going to find that that's going to be your biggest heartache and headache is getting this interface to work in how you like it. It has to be of this weird form. It's going to say like this dot base equals dialogue, this dot base. It's just how it is. That's if you ever use JavaScript, that's what the code is to start your dialogue. And that's also why I wanted to get just a bare bones template out to everybody so they have something they could just start playing with instead of having to type all this stuff out. It's a lot easier to change the text in here to what you want for your script than just getting it all from scratch. So this particular one, we just have a label at the top. We have a drop down. Drop downs are a little weird too. So This is a good one to keep in your back pocket. It'll, default to the active window. It drops so you can see all the different windows on your screen. We have a slider, in this case for when we're going to adjust the curve. So that's a nice thing to have. And an execute button. Once you get all these things kind of laid out once they're all defined, up here is where you can finally put them in a layout structure. And this is where you actually add them to the dialogue itself. You could have some margins, you can put in some spacing. They do cover it pretty well in that webinar, so it is worth watching because they do set up the GUI pretty nice and discuss everything. And probably towards the very, very bottom of all your scripts, you're going to have some main function and finally the word main. So when you run the script, it kind of looks through everything and it's defining functions, defining this, defining that, until it finally gets down to this very bottom where it goes, oh, here's a thing, and it's just going to run the main function. Well, then it goes to the main function and goes, okay, I got to make this new dialogue. Then it goes up to here, and then it actually makes your dialogue. And so yeah, we just jump into it now that we kind of talked through the bare bones. I'm going to click the little compile and run the lightning bolt, and this is all it is, right? So it says use the slider to adjust the curve and apply it to the active image. Here's our drop down. We had defined that curve value on the slider. Here's the slider, and you can make it whatever you want, and then you just click apply curve, and it applies a curve. That's all it did. And if we go all the way down to history, we could look at what the curve actually was. This was the curve we applied, and we could actually see that in our script here. So we said apply curve. We had the slider at like a 0.9, so put a 0.9 value in here. And if we open up this, here's that 0.9 value we shoved in there. And that's how it defined the curve. When you're playing with these things, it's really nice to know that all these process icons that you probably have stored on your PixInsight desktop have the code for them in the background. So if you have some nice, I don't know, you're doing like a contrast curve like this, and you want to apply that to a particular image. If you make that a new process icon, right click it and go to edit instance source code. This is the actual code it used to run that script. So you could almost pretty much copy and paste that into here. You notice it has the same stuff. Here, I'll try to get them lined up for you. Variable P equals new curve transformation. That's just the same, right? PK, so we're using the K value slider, right? That's just the brightness. It wasn't one of the red, green, or blue channels, and that's where these come into play. And that's all we defined here. We just told the curve we're just adjusting the brightness, K value curve. We didn't care about any of the other curves. They're just all default in here anyways. So if we were gonna like change our code, instead of just being up and down in the middle, you wanted it to do like a contrast kind of a situation, you can just copy this matrix out of there and replace it in here. So now it's a little different. Maybe we want this like just clean it up. So now instead of the curve value of 0.5, we may need an upper and a lower curve value. Or if you just want a single slider for contrast, you're going to want like 0.25 minus the we'll go with like 0.25 minus the curve value. And this one might be this 0.75 plus the curve value. So now when we adjust this curve, let's just set it to 0. Now this is going to be a contrast, right? It's going to take that lower point and it's going to lower it. It's going to take that upper point and it's going to raise it based on how much we want it. So yeah, let's just go ahead and run this now. Now we didn't change any of the text. It's not the midpoint anymore. It's how much contrast we're going to put into it. So now if you like do give it a 0.2, it's going to probably apply a pretty strong or a strong contrast in there. If we look at our history, there was the contrast. It took the 0.25 and it subtracted the 0.2 that we had on the slider. It took the 0.75 and added the 0.2 on the slider. So we just changed it to be like a contrast now versus just the curve adjustment. So that's really where the power of all these process icons that you have on your desktop come into play, because it has the code for what you did in there that you can use in these scripts. I mean, even things like you want to run blur exterminator as a process in your script, right? Here's all the stuff to run it as a process. So you're not limited to just kind of these other ones. Literally anything in the whole process icon arena is viable to use in your scripts, including process containers. So maybe you do have some kind of, you like running BlurX, NoiseX, StarX, you apply this curve thing, whatever the case may be. If you pull that whole container off and open it, it's going to give you the entire process container's worth of code. So you can actually you can kind of containerize it up for you in your script too.
So with that, then
I'll stop here.
doing the process container and you run a script with a process container, does that mean that it'll call into action all the processes that you put into that container?
Yeah, it will. Because process containers are set up a little bit different. You can see it has like this 0.001, 0.002, and it adds them. So it's not just going to be just a P. It'll have more. Here, I'm sure I got one that has a process container. Oh, I bet the Star Strike one. No, that was all separated too. Statistical stretch maybe. Yeah. All right. So here's an instance where I had a process container. So this is in statistical stretch. If it's working on a monochrome image, it makes the new process container. So I'll get this container kind of close by so we can see it. Makes the new process container. And then it's the same kind of wording. There's a variable P001, goes down finally to the add, then it starts the next piece of process, right? A different chunk of pixel math. Here's the third chunk of pixel math. And then finally it's doing the executing on the target view. It's going to write to the console and it's going to be done. So you can have them all in a process container to do them all in one chunk. And then in the history, after the script is ran, all this will be grouped into one undo. Is really the difference if you put it all in a container versus keeping them separate functions in your script. It'll just be one undo action, in your image versus having to undo multiple times. So, I mean, you can containerize it or not. It just, I guess depends on what you want to get out of your script and in what you're doing. Um, so yeah, that's kind of the bare. I would say this is like a bare bones template, right? We have a graphical interface that you could play around with here. There's a slider, an execute button, and then again, if you just want to change the function in here, just change it. Like here's the actual process, right? It's doing a curves transformation. If we open a histogram transformation, this is what the code for a histogram transformation looks like. And the best way to know how to actually go about changing something in there is just grabbing the slider, giving it a tweak, pulling it off, and then editing the source code, because now you can see, okay, here's where I actually grabbed it and changed it. So this right here is the thing I want to change in my code if I'm going to be using histograms. So in this case, then you would copy this and dump that into this thing, right? You don't want to change this final one. That's how it actually, this executing on the view. So don't get rid of that, otherwise it won't do anything. But that's the best way to try to figure out what variable you're trying to change in all these different processes, because they're all different. Is to tweak it how you like on your image, then open up the instance source code and see exactly what it did and how you're going to be able to translate that into an actual script.
So it's a lot of trial and error.
Yeah. We didn't even I didn't even show you any errors. Right? This is already laid out. I mean, it is very easy to get an error in something. Like one misplaced typo, right? You immediately get warnings and errors. So all I did was get rid of the O right here, right? It won't even open. It tells you that there's an error. The good thing though, when it does error, is it tells you what line it did error on, right? It ran into an issue on line 30 for us. So then you can go in here and go, okay, what's going on with with my row here? So that will help troubleshooting. It's also the reason why I like using ChatGPT to do a lot of the coding assistance, is because it will type all this stuff for you, and then you can copy and paste. And it doesn't make nearly as many typos as you, the human, are going to make, and it types a lot faster. So, I mean, this might be a great example. Here, let me open up ChatGPT, and I'll get that window over here. I'm using the paid version. You could use the free one. The free one's almost just as good. It's just for the more advanced scripting I've been doing, I needed more functionality that the 3.5 or whatever was not giving me. But it's really good if you just start with a little dialogue. If you've never used like ChatGPT before, ask it if it knows what PixInsight is. Ask it if it knows about scripting, that it uses JavaScript. And I've been doing this for a while, so it has a rapport with me. It knows a ton of scripting now in my state. But if you're just getting going, you may want to say, I have a script in PixInsight that I want to change the function on. And you take a look at the code first and see if you can help me. And then I just copy and paste the whole code in there and just give it to it. And it'll start, asking what you want to do. And we could try. Let's do something like, okay, the HDR multi-scale transform. It won't work with this image very well, right? It's just some galaxies, but you have all this stuff in here. You don't know what it all means. Just copy all that and go. I want to. I want to add the HDR multi-scale transform. Here's the process code for it, and then just give them the code, and it'll kind of go through what you want to do and type it all up for you, which is the best part of it, because it's gonna type faster than you. It's not gonna make the typo errors. It already has a good idea of how it needs to go about structuring all the code in there. So if you're not into software development or know much about coding like I didn't at all when I started all this was invaluable, right? This thing is going to be able to help you immensely. You don't even need to know what's wrong with your graphical interface. You could just say, hey, all my stuff's bunched up on the left. Can you help me separate it out better? And it's going to change that code for you in there, which is going to be hugely beneficial, right? Like they're adding stuff to the graphical user interface. I'll just let this thing type it out, and we'll add it in and just see what it thought was going to be beneficial for us.
It is truly an amazing time we live in.
Oh yeah, it makes all this completely reachable, and I think that's where the issue has been in the past. People have great ideas. The people in this hobby, especially, are very knowledgeable of what they want to accomplish, whether it's in processing, hardware, whatever it may be. And now there's actually tools to make it a lot more accessible. If you didn't know how to code, but you were really good at math, you knew what you wanted to do in PixInsight, but you had no way of translating that into something that would be user friendly to help others out there that may not be good at math, right? So let's just copy this code. We'll go over to our script editor. I'll just highlight the whole thing and copy and paste it over it, and run it. So now we got our apply curve. So now we can apply our curve. I gotta give it a curve, and then you can apply the HDR multi-scale transform. So that's how it integrated it. It kind of made it a two-step process for us, which is fine. But maybe you didn't want it to be a two-step process, and then at that point you can go, hey, this is great. It functioned. Yeah. All right. Great. That worked. Instead of two buttons, can you have HDR run immediately after the curves transformation? And then it'll just type the script now for that. Instead of two buttons, it'll put it into one thing for you. So now you hit the button once, it'll run the curves, and then immediately run the HDR transformation. Again, this is just a made-up example of something here. Like I don't know why you would do it, but it just I think combining something like this, pick your favorite large language model generator here, and start working with it, because it's going to be able to help you solve your problems with your script a heck of a lot faster. And especially when you start getting errors, you could just, copy and paste out of this thing and paste it into ChatGPT. We got this error with that recent code, and work through fixing it. Um, I mean, I'm not too proud to say that I have crashed PixInsight so many times trying to get these scripts working. Right? It gets hung up in an infinite loop, or you run out of memory, or just something goes sideways. The API doesn't like what you're trying to do in there. I've crashed it so many times. You don't even want to know. I'm surprised that it even loads anymore for me. But I think
Yeah,
that's
your scripts are just invaluable. They're just so truly amazing. It doesn't surprise me that in the development stages, because they're so complex but simple to use. I'm not surprised it crashed PixInsight during development.
oh yeah. Like I think what's in my image may be the most complex script in here, and I mean, while we're in here, we might as well just look, right. So um, all those, when you click the advanced search tab, all those different checkboxes, right, those all need to be defined in here. I have a ton of variables. There's a whole nother section just for previews. We didn't even look at a preview in, maybe that'll be video number 2. Getting a preview to work, because
Yep.
they're complicated. You can't use this real time preview that's here in processes. You can't use that in scripts. So you have to make a temporary image in the background, hidden, and then use that temporary image in the preview. You actually paint it pixel for pixel into the preview window of your script, and then anything you manipulate, you have to have the script running on that temporary image, and then when you're ready to apply, like Blemish Blaster, you're doing all this stuff to these temporary windows in the background and displaying it in the script preview. And then when you actually apply it to the main image, that's when it has to rerun the whole script again on the actual main image and apply it to that. And then when you're done, don't forget all those windows will open up in the background, which will start stacking up in this lower left. And if you forget about that, all of a sudden you'll have like 50 open things down here, which can happen every time it errors. It didn't properly exit out of the script, so those are still all open in the background. If you don't have a big RAM in your computer, you can quickly run out of that. Thankfully, I have a 128 gig, so I'm pretty good on it. I actually got a little monitor thing. I don't even know it here. I got a little monitor thing on my computer to tell me how much like RAM I'm using and stuff when I'm doing this. But it's easy to, with those previews, it's easy to get pretty far gone. But this, yeah, what's in my image is just ridiculous. There's so much going on. Like every single, it's grown to the point that you can't put this whole thing in ChatGPT anymore, which is scary to me, who's not in software. That I have to know some stuff now, since I can't just dump the whole code into it and have it figure out the issues. We gotta piece it out piece by piece. Um, and I hope everybody gets there like that. That would be great if everybody starts getting some massive scripts going to everybody. But it's worth the effort. You're going to learn more about PixInsight and what it's actually doing. Trying to develop a script that you're going to use than you probably ever imagined too. So even something simple that you do all the time if you find yourself ever doing the same exact histogram transformation or curves transformation, just kind of over and over, just tweaked a little bit, that might be a perfect time to make a little script. And just like this bare bones template, um, I don't know how to make it small now. The bare bones template one, right? Maybe you just do a little contrast curve time and time again, and you want a little script for that. I mean, that's what we made at first here. Let's get rid of this. Um, the other HDR stuff. We want the range to like 20. Yeah, so now this is just strictly a contrast adjuster. So uh, that's all the script is going to do at this point is just do a little contrast, um, and that may be what you need. I mean, I don't even think there's a contrast. No, there's not even a contrast thing in PixInsight, right? So if you want to just have a little contrast script like any Photoshop or Affinity or GIMP has, you got to make a little tiny script for that.
Yep. Now, word of advice from you: when you're building a script and you're working with ChatGPT, is it a good idea to kind of start small, get your basic thing done, and then just build it from there a little bit at a time?
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, I, I would definitely recommend that. I normally start with absolutely something like that. You want to kind of get your base thing you're trying to accomplish in there first, and you may have a vision of all these different options and tweaks and all this stuff you want. Just kind of maybe just make a little list off to the side. My core thing is I'm making a script to improve the contrast. Great. So now we have this in here. Now that that's in there, maybe we don't necessarily want it to be at this 0.25 and 0.75. Maybe you want this um, like at the median value, and this is 2 times the median value or something for your contrast. So it's going to be more dynamic into what your actual image is. Um, so that's your next step. You talk to chat it up with ChatGPT. Hey, we define it now more in terms of the median versus just hard coded at 0.25 and 0.75 to make it more dynamic to whatever the image actually is. And then work through that scenario, because it may give you some bad advice at first about, okay, let's calculate the median, and it's going to try taking every single pixel in the image and adding them all up and then finding the median and all that, which would take a huge amount of time, right, as it tries to calculate that. But that might already be a thing in PixInsight that's defined in the image itself. So, like the median is already defined. It's right here. In PixInsight, the image itself has a median associated with it. Let's see where I can actually find it. Here it is. All I'm doing is saying return the median of the image. There's no calculation to be done. It's already in PixInsight. So a lot of the time I find myself just going just searching like PixInsight forum script image median or something like that, and see what others have wrote in the forum. Just Google that phrase and see what comes up in the search results. And a lot of the time, there'll be already somebody that has asked that in the forum. One of the software developers from PixInsight, usually it's Juan, will come back and go, "Oh yeah, just do this," and then you'll have a quick answer. instead of trying to go down some weird rabbit hole of taking every single pixel value and finding the median that way. So before you try doing something, hit up the forum too. Yeah, PixInsight forum. So it's it's definitely worth trying to get in here and just seeing what there is. Like, this guy was asking about taking the median value of two images and adding them for whatever reason. And Juan was like, I don't know why you would do that, but here's how you could do that. And then there's this right here where it just goes, oh, the image already has a median. Let's just return that. It's like, okay, great. I could use this little tiny bit in the code I'm working on. Right? I don't need all this other crap. I'll just take this and use it for my own purpose. So the PixInsight forum is a great place to try to find snippets as well. All my all my code I put out there. I put at the top that it's under just the Creative Commons license, and you're free to remix, transform, build upon the material. I make my stuff open, so you can take any of my scripts. That's why I also sent you the star stretch. I think is a great one for people to play with. There's more going on than just the bare bones. It has code in there for the preview that we could talk about a different time. It has code in there for the new instance button, right? When you run star stretch, it has this new instance button you could pull off that is everybody looks for this thing. So it has the code in there for that. It has some various other niceties about showing and hiding portions of the screen, checkboxes, the optional SCNR in there, right? So there's a if then statement. If this thing is checked, then do the SCNR. So all that kind of basic codes in the star stretch. And again, feel free to grab it. Adapt, remix, transform, build upon it is on every single one of the scripts I put out. Because I've been trying to do this for the community. These JS files aren't like locked. You can open them in a notepad and see all the code. So it's out there for everybody anyways. Might as well just help the community with it when you can.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so in this first one, what more do you want to see or play with? Or I know a question that comes up a lot, at least for me, and you may get it too, is here, let me pull up the star stretch script. Is this when you drag this thing off to apply to a thing, you get this not supported in this PixInsight version. I've gotten this question more times than I care to answer at this point, because scripts aren't like processes. You can't just drag that little blue thing off and apply it to your image. All that's trying to do is save the settings of this script, and by you dragging it onto the image, it's saving the settings in this little thing now. You're dropping it on an image, it's trying to open the script again while it's already open. So that's what this warning is actually saying. It's you attempted to execute the script recursively. You can't do that, and that's all that is. But you may run into it after your video. Hey, I can't do the thing. That's why you always have to put in like an execute button or an OK button or something like that to actually run the script. And maybe we can talk about it on the next one too, but there are different contexts in which the script is ran it, and they talk about it in the webinar early on for whatever reason. Like the second part of the webinar is about target view, direct context, or global context that you're running these scripts in. So just be mindful. That's what all these buttons down here actually mean. If you didn't know, but this is how you apply it directly to a target. It runs it in the direct mode. If you have an active window, it does switch immediately to the target view there, and then in global instance. If you don't want the script running in global, my star stretch script does have that in there that prevents it from running. So in star stretch, when you try running it in a global context, I have it just print out in the console that you can't do that. We could get into more of those technicalities in the advanced video, but I guess the star stretch also has some good things in there too. Writing to the console, like how did I have it write this stuff over to the console in the first place? That's what all this, console.critical line, console.warning line. There's note lines. Those are all the different colors that they use over there. This bit of code is how it actually says that Seti Astro in the console over here, right? It's just ASCII art. So maybe you want to get fancy and just Google an ASCII art generator and have it make you a signature for your own scripts. That's all I did. and so I think Star Stretch has a lot of stuff in there for you. It handles both grayscale and color images differently. So there's a lot of little things in here that could apply a lot of power to a script as you're trying to build it. So once you get comfortable with like the bare bones template, I would say then start manipulating the Star Stretch script, and really start feeling around to how things will affect like this preview up here and stuff like that. Just playing around with it. I would just say be sure at the top you change the feature ID to the whatever you're actually trying to have it do, and put your own name in here, right? HLP scripts or whatever, and then you'll have your own little drop down when you go here and you add it as a feature script, right? Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff. You can even add like icons to these things, and just all sorts of stuff you could do with it once you have played around with it as long as I have now.
A lot of good information there. So basically, the takeaway for today: do some homework, watch the webinar. You don't
Yep.
really need to be familiar with JavaScript. We can utilize ChatGPT, build a relationship with it, and
Yep.
start small and then build from there.
Yeah. I would start small. Start with this bare bones thing. Fiddle around with just getting curve to do what you want it to do. And like I said, be sure to just open curves, put some points down, and maybe manipulate a couple curves, like like this, and pull that off. Open the source code for it and see where exactly every one of these things was affected. Okay, here's the blue one I affected. Here's the K value I affected. Here's the chrominance value I affected. So those are the things you want to start getting comfortable manipulating in your scripts. And like you said, start small. And then when you want to add stuff, by all means, use something like ChatGPT as your typing assistant, right? And have it dump out all the code for you and just work it back and forth like that. I think it's for somebody like me that's not in software, completely invaluable to take the ideas I want to get done in PixInsight to get done, right?
Exactly. No, this is amazing information. You know, when I was watching that webinar the other day, I was getting worried. Like, man, I have no idea the first thing about JavaScript. Where am I even going to start with this? But it's just where you're showing is incredible. It
Well,
seems
like I said, in the webinar, I get it. I get what they were trying to do. They were teaching it like a mini course or something from like a technical college level where they want to kind of build you. I don't think that's the best way to learn. What we need is more like when you're learning a second language, they hop you right into saying hello, how are you, where's the bathroom, some ins and outs of actually using it, and not necessarily defining all the letters and stuff for you right away or spelling conventions, right? Yes, the webinar is going to talk about this object explorer in more detail than you want for whatever reason. It's going to talk about context and all sorts of stuff. I think it's a heck of a lot easier to use something like this bare bones template and start messing with it and building a rapport with something like ChatGPT. You're going to learn how to use it faster. And then when you have to dig into the more nitty gritty details of why something broke, that's when you can learn that piece. When you start getting errors and you froze PixInsight a couple times, that's when you're really going to understand why you couldn't put this bit of code below this bit of code, right? You'll those will come. That'll come just naturally. But I think playing around with it and actually getting your hands on what's going on is going to be more beneficial than necessarily just watching the webinar. But I think the webinar is important to really ground yourself into what we're talking about. It'll help a lot.
Agreed. So I think that's probably a good stopping place for today. It
Yeah.
gives
Okay.
the generic basis. It gives us a starting point, some homework to do, and get some practice, and then we'll pick it up again in a more advanced video.
I think that'll be good. Yeah, I sent you the bare bones template, the star stripe script, the link to the webinar, but it's not like you already had that.
Truly an honor and privilege learning how to build scripts from one of the most popular PixInsight script builders out there. Please join me in thanking Frank at Seti Astro for taking the time to do a series of script building videos with us. Let's make sure to show him the support he deserves. Make sure to check out his channel as well as his website for more of his amazing content, tips, and tutorials. If you haven't had a chance to try out his scripts yet, make sure to check them out. I'll have a link to the script page of his website in the description of this video. Until the next time, clear skies.